Republican Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina is out with a major announcement after voting against the big, beautiful bill. I wonder why. Earlier today, Tillis stated that he will not seek another term, and just moments ago, President Trump weighed in on Tillis, writing on Truth Social, "Great news, Senator Thom Tillis will not be seeking re-election." Joining the discussion is political analyst and Columbia University professor and a friend of the show, Basil Smikle. Basil, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah.
So what do you make of this? Voting no and then announcing that he is not seeking re-election. A profile in courage or cowardice?
You mean the peace, two fingers, I'm out that he just did?
Not my problem anymore.
Exactly right. You know, I would like to say that it's a profile courage. Look, he talked about in the statement that he wanted more quality of life with his family. I'll take that. However, if you really feel that strongly about not just this bill, but, you know, everything that Donald Trump is pushing through Congress, pushing through the Senate, why don't you kind of stay and fight? That's what, and Bernie Sanders kind of touched on that, you know, stay and fight. If you lose it on the battlefield, you lose, but you lose feeling that you, or at least I would think, feeling that you had the support of your state to provide policy that was in their best interest. But he says wants to spend more time with his family.
Well, all of a sudden.
Well, we know some of the answer to the question you just raised, right? Which is that we now know after years of reporting that many of the people who have tried to stay and fight and disagree but remain associated with the party, they've had death threats, personal attacks on family members, and their lives have really never been the same. I imagine that might be a factor here.
I think more and more members of Congress are talking about how toxic that environment is. You know, I have a friend who former member of Congress that always talks about in his intro that he was proud to be unindicted while he was there. If you have to put that in your bio,
low bar.
You know
low
what I mean?
bar indeed.
It's clearly a very toxic environment. I get that the threats against himself, perhaps, and his family might have weighed in quite heavily. You had Justice Roberts talking about that earlier, how the threats to the judiciary were significant and sort of beyond the pale. So it is a turbulent environment, and unfortunately, it just doesn't allow you the opportunity to do your job.
Well, so I wonder about all of this. He has the opportunity to kind of go out with a bang, right? Like he could buck Trump not only on this bill, but on a whole bunch of other things that
on his agenda
that he might find unpalatable. I'm not expecting him to suddenly like do a 180 and become a Democrat, but there are plenty of things that Donald Trump is doing that he stands for, whether it's on tariffs or greater potential corruption, or at least the appearance of corruption, that do not seem like they comport with the Republican agenda. Do you expect him to suddenly feel unshackled and go after those kinds of decisions?
No, I don't. It's just as simple as that. And this is sort of the point I was making earlier, that he could stay in and continue the fight. He chooses not to, fine. But that doesn't mean that he is all of a sudden not going to be a Republican. That doesn't mean that as a Republican, he's not going to try to find a way to make sure that another Republican takes over his seat at some point. So the kind of damage that he might do by going after Trump, or by, I don't know, somehow deciding that he wants to be a little more independent, I don't know that that works in his best interest. I don't know that he thinks it works in his party's best interest in the long term. But the fact is, I don't see where members of Congress who have showed even a little bit of fealty to Donald Trump have really said in any extended period of time that they're going to show a spine, that all of a sudden they're going to be very strident and say, no, I'm going to go against this, I'm going to protect whomever. Haven't seen that.
Is there an opportunity here for Democrats? I spent a lot of time covering the election in North Carolina. I already know there are going to be people there saying, Roy Cooper, get in this race today, please. But we also know from our colleague Vaughn Hilliard that Laura Trump is eyeing this Senate seat, too. What do you think the dynamics of this race could shape up to look like?
Well, it is important to note that North Carolina is actually competitive. It's competitive in many ways because of a lot of the families, including African-American families, who've left the northern states and moved into Carolina. So Democrats do see an opportunity. They saw it with Tillis anyway. But this actually does present a stronger opportunity for Democrats to take back the seat, whether it's Cooper or someone else. I think, I will say this, what lessons we've learned over the last few days, given particularly what's happened in New York and the importance of being a movement candidacy is critically important, not just in a city like New York, but across the country. So that kind of movement politics is what I think Democrats need to focus on in North Carolina.
There are a few different buckets of Republicans who oppose this bill for different reasons. Some who've opposed it for Medicaid cuts, others because it inflated, the spending and did not kind of sound fiscally responsible. What's the messaging for Democrats here? I mean, you've got the Ron Johnsons of the world who wanted more spending, and the Josh Hawleys or the Rand Pauls on different sides of the reasons why they oppose this, even though Josh Hawley came around, even Ron Johnson has come around. But what's the messaging for Democrats in trying to maneuver between the two? The hypocrisy of Republicans or the hurting of the Americans?
I just focus on the hurting of the Americans. Right. I think the hypocrisy to some extent might be built in, but a lot of voters are willing to overlook that. But they're not willing to overlook the fact that according to Bernie Sanders, that 50,000 people may die every year as a result of this. Let's just focus on the Medicaid in and of itself.
I mean, Mitch McConnell says they'll get over it.
Yeah, but
well, if they're dead,
but here's the other thing: if you're a K-12 student in this country that relies, for example, on SNAP, right, to feed your family, to feed those kids so they can go off and go to school and be healthy, you may end up losing a lot of that. College students actually rely on SNAP just to be able to be in college and eat and stay healthy. And I will say, just as a personal sort of reflection, when I was in undergrad, me and most of my friends were on food stamps. It was the only way that we could actually eat and stay in class and not be hungry and be able to study. It actually does help and support students. When you think about Medicaid, this is an end run in many respects around trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. In attempting to do that, not only going to take so many people out of Obamacare, but it also hurts children with disabilities. It also hurts people with mental illness that need that support to be able to get the help that they need. It's a means-tested program, which means if you have it, you need it. And they're going to all of a sudden now push people off of these programs. The damage that it's going to do is extraordinary. And Democrats need to be able to list chapter and verse for every American in every congressional district who it's going to hurt and how.
Right. Well, we're starting to see some of them articulate that, although I know there's a desire from others to see Democrats get out there and really hit the road and drive that message home in a more direct way. Basil Smikle, thank you.
Thanks,
as always, great to have you at the table.